Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. Peter, how's it going?
It's going really well. I mean, I'm excited today. We have a great consummate athlete question. It's a follow-up to our 25 hours of training, which was maybe even a little out of our consummate athlete, or it was like an elite few. So today's question I'm really excited about because we're talking about the time-limited athlete, the very time-limited, the very busy athlete who we love to train and work alongside.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like this question is very much up your alley because it is a lot of the people you work with, if not all the time, certainly during big chunks of their lives.
Mm-hmm. So we'll get into that question. That's the question that rather than 25 hours, we're calling this the 2.5 hour week, to try and grab the headlines and the social media comments and so forth. So feel free to put in your thoughts and say that you love this episode. We appreciate that. But before that, you were just down at a women's mountain bike festival down in New York. How did that go on the weekend?
Yeah, so Rooted Mountain Bike is down in Bemis Point, New York, which is about an hour-ish out of Buffalo. And oh my gosh, it was so much fun. This is my second year going and truly summer camp vibes. It's literally just behind this really cool bike shop that actually has trails right behind it as well. But it's in a field, everyone's camping, hanging out. I just had such a blast getting to chat with so many different awesome women. And yeah, I got to chat about Shred Girls, talk about all things saddle sore related, we'll say.
Has it been a while since you've given that actual talk in front of people? You've done talks in front of people, but that actual your saddle sore, Molly has a book called Saddle, Sore, and it often plays well as a presentation, but it's been a bit. How did it go?
Yeah, I mean, I did similar down at Rooted last year. This is my second year being there. And it's always really fun because we do try to take it in the direction of what people are interested in, right? Like if I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding and chatter starting to happen when I start talking about, say, the best way to wash your chamois, PSA, wash it inside out. So that way the actual chamois gets washed, and then make sure you either fully dry it all the way in the dryer or you hang it out to line dry, again, with the chamois getting some UV rays to get rid of the bacteria on it.
And just the soap out of it.
Yeah.
It is a sponge of sorts.
Yeah, we're big on the double rinse in this house. And also if you have a lot of if you tend to have a lot of irritation down there, switch to a sensitive, no dye, no scent, etc. detergent. That tends to help as well.
Okay.
Yeah. You can see I can just go off on these topics and I'm really excited about it. It was really fun. We went in all different directions. I think a lot of the conversation ended up shifting towards fueling and nutrition on the bike, which often those conversations do. This chat that I had was a lunchtime, just no question is off limits talk. So it's a lot of the saddle sore kind of stuff, but we also started talking about nutrition. And I do think what I was getting from people was, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, we've had dietitians talk about this, a lot of people have been really stressed that they're not eating enough on the bike. And to a great extent, that's true. But I think because high carb has been so trendy with the pro cycling people and the elite gravel athletes and all that, everyone is really nervous that they're supposed to be getting in 100 grams of carbs, which is 400 calories an hour, which for most of us is A, just straight up difficult to do, and then B, is a lot of calories per hour to be taking in.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about no, there's a range. You don't need to be panicking that you're not taking in that much. Most of us probably need to work pretty hard just to get up to 30 grams an hour of carbs. Right. So I think that actually really helped a lot of people put it in perspective a bit more.
Okay, excellent. So it's great now you have this empire of books that you've put together with Strong Girl Publishing. So you had a great display set up. You've been working hard on your display. So that sounded like it went over really well, but you can display all the different nutrition books you have now and all your children's books and your young adult books. And then also our book, Becoming a Consummate Athlete, that was probably relevant for today's discussion as well. But yeah, so kudos on your hard work on your display. And I think you posted some of the display pictures to social media as well.
Yeah, I'm very, very proud of my display because I made it myself and actually like didn't have to spend a ton of money doing it. I like was looking at shelves and different ways to display stuff, and I was like looking on Amazon and everywhere else trying to find the best thing, and then I was suddenly realizing, oh, I could probably make this. So I did, and poor Peter, he got this garage and he's so excited to have all the space for bikes.
All my bike stuff.
And then it's just been taken over by projects.
Yes. So we have that. And so upcoming then we have, what do we have upcoming? I'm blanking on all the upcoming things.
Well, if you missed Rooted, but you're like, oh, a women's thing sounds really fun, I will also be at Feisty Fest down in Pennsylvania in September. I think it's mid-September, so definitely check that out.
And it's probably from your GTA. We have a lot of listeners in Toronto. That's not where everyone's from, but just for that, it's sort of like an 8-9 hour maybe drive from Canada, depending on where you are in Canada. It would be similar for Quebec, I would think. And then if you're in the U.S., then you probably have a sense of how far that is to get to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so that's going to be a super fun weekend. We'll include a link to that in the show notes. And then you actually also have a women's gravel camp coming up.
Clinic. I keep saying camp, and then it's a clinic. It's like 3 hours long.
But I guess it's a camp if you combine it with the Cranky Goat gravel race the next day.
So they actually have a coffee ride at 8:30 in the morning. We're doing this clinic sort of midday, and it's low key. Small group. It's not meant to be a massive thing or anything, because I know that's like a turnoff for some people to have like a massive, like 1,000 people practicing gravel or something. And then on the Sunday, we're doing a big ride, non-competitive. It's open to anyone, men or women. And it's a couple different distances, but it's mostly just benefiting, or is meant to benefit our local race team, which has some really great young athletes who are doing really well on the national and international scale, both on road and mountain, and I guess really cross and everything else. They do everything.
Yeah, so we'll include a link to that in the show notes. And then final thing is, if you are watching the Tour de France and you're wondering, what can I learn from the Tour de France? Check out some of my coverage over on bicycling.com. We've been doing videos after every stage. I'm on 9 of the stages, most of which are still coming up. And then I'll be doing the Tour de France Femmes with them and with Queen Stage. So if you are excited about bike racing, definitely check that out. And we'll include links to that in the show notes.
Okay, and then the only other sort of news race item, I'm probably blanking on several others, but it was Hard Rock 100, one of the big running races in Colorado. It did go despite all the wildfire stuff going on in Colorado right now, which is a shame, but it went, which was great. And then 2 of our favorites, I think, Ludo Pomeray won again for the 3rd time, I think, in a row, and beat his course record, as we've been talking about all these course records in running, especially. I think he improved on his thing like by, again, like a large margin for how many times and how good he is at this race. But he is 51. We've talked about him last year when he won this same race. 51 years old, and he won by I think it was hours, over the next, and like Tom Evans, there's some really good people in this thing. And then of course Courtney DeWalter returned and won her, I think, 4th out of 5, if I remember. It's either 3 out of 4 or 4th out of 5. But of course, Courtney DeWalter is the greatest of all time, and just put on. She said in this one she was going to do it different and didn't have a pacer in the final bit, which I thought was interesting, because there's this rumble of in some of these high level 100 milers now moving to a no pacer for the top people, because often in these 100 milers they'll have a pacer maybe for the last half or last third or something. So she said she just wanted to experience it on her own, and so I think she beat her clockwise course record by, I think, 20 minutes or something like that, but hours again to the second place person in this Hard Rock race.
It's interesting, because I was saying that about Western States. I would actually love it if they had a second version of Western States that was a no aid Western States, where they had neutral support, obviously, all the normal aid stations, but you just can't have someone in the aid stations for you. No pacers, just nothing.
Well, and she had said part of that, no pacers, but also really minimal crew, and I'm not sure exactly what minimal crew means in her world. I don't know if it was just one person who followed her around or what, but yeah, it's sort of, maybe she's on the same vibe as you in terms of sort of bringing it back to where it was in some ways.
Yeah. Although I do just want to, it's funny, I actually saw a post about this the other day. I believe it's Allison Desir, pointing out that everyone's talking right now about how like, we wish we could go back to the glory days of trail running and all this stuff. But she made a great point that trail running back then was extremely white, extremely male dominated, not overly inclusive or welcoming. So a lot of the changes have in fact been for the better to make the sport a little bit more. There's still a lot to do. Get more women running, get more people of color out on the trails, all that kind of stuff.
Have they started saying like the spirit of trail running? Like, is this the spirit of gravel?
That's how it feels.
It's the same like, discussion, isn't it?
Exactly. So I think while it's, while I can say like, I want the old school style of racing to come back where it was a bit more the fastest person wins, not the best supported person wins.
I don't know if that's
that's
maybe an interpretation, but
that was unkind to the winners. I apologize. They're very fast. But I do just feel like there's a lot of people that are, now sitting like 5th through 10th, say, that maybe could be doing better if they had the support that
Sure. And like what being fast, this is where we get into our ALs, which I like to always harp on. But like, yeah, the best people now are probably accessing other stuff like a nutritional sponsor. They can afford the gels to do this. They can afford the staff. They can have the fanciest shoes. Running's becoming sort of like biking. Like it used to be. Like when I started biking, I could use a department store bike in my first couple of races. And now if you showed up as a kid, like it's sort of sad. You probably wouldn't do very well because there's kids with carbon dual suspension bikes, right?
So it really is following the spirit of gravel, this whole trail running thing, because gravel sort of started as like an offshoot of cyclocross, right? Yeah. Like cyclocross got too expensive to do because you had to have the 2 bikes, you had to have the crew, you had to have someone in the pits, you had to have all of this support to do well at it. So then people shifted over to gravel because it was like, okay, I don't need any support.
Well, and maybe you could use your bike the other 8 months of the year. You have this nice bike that you bought or 2 bikes, and then you could go and use them and go on an adventure.
And then now gravel has, grown up, professionalized, etc. And now, like, same with trail running, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's the technological, there's the nutritional, there's all this stuff. But I don't know that you want to go back. I think you're always going to have that with everything, including life these days. But I think you want to be careful because you forget sometimes. Like, we wouldn't be watching Ludo doing this. I wouldn't have never been watching Hard Rock, even if Ludo was there still running through, and just doing an amazing job as a 51-year-old. And now we have this great, both him and Courtney are just so inspiring that you can do these things, period, let alone at 51, to be going out and just continuously improving is just like, whoa, like pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So on the note of continuously improving and all of that, let's talk about today's question. So question is, they like the question about what you would do if you had 25 hours to train, but they laughed because they're actually the opposite. They have about 2 to 3, so say 2.5, just for
I think you need that for the headline.
The verisimilitude of it. They have 2.5 hours a week to train and do want to jump into some group rides, some races. Basically, they want to be doing things that, if not like a professional level, at the highest level that they can. So how would you train someone like that? Having just would you do a couple of short and one longer window of riding? So they're saying they have a couple little, short moments available during the week and then a slightly longer one on the weekend, which, I think this is actually most working professionals. I think 2.5 hours actually sounds like a very minimal training plan, but I would bet you that this is the vast majority of people, the vast majority of listeners. Maybe you get a slightly longer window some weekends, but even for us, weekends get busy, right?
Well, and I think this is where we're going into that. Maybe our governmental recommendations I always go back to. The 24-hour fitness guidelines are sort of what's put forth in Canada, and sort of the idea of like how much movement should you include in the 24 hours and ways to do that and what does that look like. And so most governments will put forth these recommendations to try and guide the general person. And so that it's all usually 150 minutes of like cardiovascular training. And then there's always a bit of hand wringing around like, what if you do some high intensity? Could you reduce that amount? Which in the cycling population, most people are like, what do you mean reduce that? Like I'm going to blow right through that. But what they're saying is that for most of the health benefits of exercise, like that's sort of a good target that seems maybe approachable by a lot of people who are maybe not into endurance sport. So I like to start there when people ask like, how much training should I do? Now, I always do also remind that they do also recommend about an hour of strength training or 2 30-minute sessions of strength training. So that's a good guidance. And then the other thing that's in our 24-hour movement guidelines that I love is they encourage you to sprinkle movement throughout the day, or what we might call movement snacks. And so this isn't training in the way that a lot of us would think about it, but it is things like taking the stairs, parking further away, commuting by bicycle, a lot of these things that maybe we don't think about when we're asking this question of like, I'm very in a busy phase of life. How do I get this training in to do a goal like, go to a big Grand Fondo, keep up on an occasional group ride or a couple of these like fun friend rides. We're going to do big adventures and I just want to go. I want to go bike packing a couple times. These are common goals that we would have. And so this is where I start is like these sort of recommendations, because I do think that they're pretty good at guiding us towards okay training, right? That's going to let us do a lot of these things while we're also chasing these other elements of life.
For sure. Now, do you want to kind of start with those other considerations, or do you want to talk about kind of the immediate, how you would actually, if you're writing this into Training Peaks, if you're prescribing the training plan?
Yeah. Well, I always, you've, and also Matt Perot over at Canadian Cycling Magazine, when I'm writing articles, you got to like get to the point and give the people what they want. So maybe it is just like as a sample, like case study type thing. What I would say is, something like Dan John's strength, what is that called? Easy strength is like always going to come up in something like this. We're busy. Can we fit in like something that takes 15, 20, 25 minutes in the morning? Maybe this is while breakfast is cooking, or you got to get up and you're going to do just this easy strength. It's not super hard. It is called easy strength. But over the course of months, you can slowly just edge up what easy strength is. So you still might be squatting a fair bit, but it's not excessive. And so he uses a lot of like 3x3, 3 sets of 3 reps. So think about a squat. Maybe you do a little bit of warm up with your squat bar, and then you add a bit of plates. But again, not suffering, just like edging it up. Most of the times you're getting into the gym. So we would do that with a couple of movements. So, push-ups, we could do this. It doesn't even have to be with a barbell for a lot of people. But that would be something that I would keep quite handy, again, to try and get towards those recommendations of maybe like two strength sessions. Let's not even put a time on those. And then I do think that's something, if you are going to a mountain bike race or you are going to a gravel race, getting something that looks like that, like this would be the specificity, is maybe that weekend 90 minutes. If it's a gravel group ride we're getting ready for, it might even be a gravel group ride, but it could also be you going out and going up and down the local hill on a gravel road to really get like a good workout, but also get the tire testing. This is our mechanical. Maybe there's some skill if it's a mountain bike or a gravel ride where you're turning around or you're descending, you're cornering while going fast. So I would be pretty specific and hopefully fun. If that's the thing you want to be doing, if you had lots more time, you go ahead and you do the thing. And I would probably put a bit of intensity into that, just because we probably don't have a lot of time. Again, if this is like a 90-minute workout, it would be like, for me, I would go out to the local hill. I'd go up and down it 4 times. It would take me between 8 and 13 minutes to get up our local hill. And then I'd come back home, basically, and that would be it, right? Maybe I'd do a little bit more if I had a little bit more time. Try and add like some corners and some fun sort of single track, even on my gravel bike, again, if that's relevant, and then come home. Now, during the week, if we did have, because we're already sort of at like 90 plus some little strength sessions, but
I was going to say, so now we're down to like having, let's say, like 30 minutes or
maybe,
maybe 30 minutes. And let's say you have maybe 2 30-minute blocks. Let's give this person like, maybe they do have a bit more like skew time than we think.
Yeah. And so this is where we could start being a little creative. So I do think that the strength is going to be like the biggest bang for a lot of people's buck. It's going to give us muscle. It's going to help with metabolism. It's going to help with range of motion. There's going to be a bit of transfer over to the cardiovascular, but obviously if you only did strength, it's not going to be like you're riding your bike, right? But we're going to get that on the weekend. And then I think you're just trying to sprinkle some biking in. So we might do, if we actually or have like very rigid 30-minute windows, I think you could do a bit of biking as part of those easy strength sessions. So maybe we have more of like a warm up even, but you could finish with maybe like a quick 5 minutes of 30-30s, like a little bit of high intensity finisher. I don't typically do that in strength, but again, when we're time limited like that, I think that would be an okay way to do it, is just something like that. If you felt like you needed more like a tempo session or a muscular endurance, you could finish with like 20 minutes of tempo. Maybe this pushes the session up more close to like 35, 40 minutes, but you could be pretty effective with that. And this is obviously on an indoor trainer because we have to be done at 30 minutes. And so that's where the trainer is very nice, is there's no variables. So there's no extra getting dressed. There's no tools. There's no flats. There's no traffic. So I think that's a great use of that indoor trainer, is when we're just like really limited. But we want to make sure that some of the sessions we do get outside into nature and doing the thing that's fun, so that we remember that. If we did have another session in the middle of the week where we could get outside for 30, 40 minutes, whatever, I would take that. And then again, you would look at, is this person best to do sort of like a zone 2 steady workout? Which again could still be on gravel, still could have some skill elements, or would you go to something like a little high intensity sort of workout, or something classic for cycling that's going to be really effective and low stress, is just like a 2x20 minutes workout, which again might take an hour to execute indoors or outdoors, but something like that, 3x10, and you could build that over your months that we're talking here, because this thought experiment is sort of like, we have like the year, the month where it's going to be pretty hectic and time limited. So we only have so much time. So I think, again, I would maybe look at some of that, like what do you need to get better? And so if you are missing some of that basic aerobic ability, it could be a zone 2 session. If you're someone who like those long efforts, something like a hour of power, they used to call that, or 2x20 minutes, something where you're just riding like sweet spotty would make some sense. But again, you don't want to go if you're really tired and not sleeping, you'd want to be careful. But if you're rock solid on all that, then that's sort of the rough way I would solve that. So a couple of strength sessions, hopefully quick, then maybe that even adds to the 2.5 hours, because you can fit it in while other stuff's going on. Maybe the kids are in the pool and you're doing some core and strength. Maybe it's a lunchtime workout. Maybe it's something in the morning while breakfast is cooking. So sometimes thinking about those different sports can actually expand that 2.5 hours.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think kind of backing up, the philosophical point of this is that, yes, you can absolutely still train actually like at a pretty decently high level with very limited time, while also acknowledging that, yeah, this is not going to be your best season of training. Like, we can maintain, we're probably not going to have vast improvements unless you're coming from at like 0 and you only have 2.5 hours. And in that case, like, you can actually get quite a bit better.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Like, this is where we would start someone, is something like this, right? Where there's like sort of, you hit all your an endurance workout, maybe a moderate workout, maybe a high intensity workout, and then a little bit of strength or movement. And that's like a great week, right? If we can sort of fit in those little buckets, and they probably shouldn't be 5 hours. They should be shorter windows, because we're just getting started.
Yeah, and I actually like to see this, because to me, this lower number, and again, I don't know the person, so who knows? But to me, it implies that they're probably not sacrificing sleep to get this amount of volume in, right? Like, they're not waking up at 3 a.m. so they can do a 2-hour workout before they have to start getting ready for a 14-hour day. This implies to me that they're living the rest of their lives pretty normally, and it might be a hectic time, but we're not necessarily trying to cram a ton of training in.
Sure. Yeah. And so I love that. You start with, okay, what's the goal of this season? It's not to, enter the lifetime Grand Prix and be like a professional gravel racer. It is, I just want to maintain some fitness to be able to do these couple of things with friends. There's not even necessarily like a performance goal aside from like, I want to finish this Grand Fondo, this group ride, this adventure. We're going to do this bike packing trip. Maybe it's not super intense. I could see someone doing this and still thinking like, I want to race cyclocross this fall or something like that, but I don't need to win the cyclocross race. I just want to feel like I can get in there and do it.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a difference there where like I feel defeated by the cyclocross race versus, like I was mid-pack, but I was in there and battling it out and I finished the whole 40-minute race or whatever the cyclocross thing might be. And similar with the Grand Fondo, right? I don't need to be at the front of the Grand Fondo. I just want to keep moving throughout the Grand Fondo.
Yeah. And okay, the other thoughts that we had are sort of around where you can sneak in some training during the week. And we fully recognize that not all of these work for everyone. And for some people, they would add a lot of stress.
Sure. And just before we do that, sorry, I sort of said the two ends and it was summarizing what you were saying, but the sleep, obviously when if we're talking about body composition or performance or health or fit, like sleep is going to be a big thing, de-stressing, which is easy to say, but like in a full life, we're going to call this a full life, not a stressful life or a busy life, but trying to protect the sleep is going to make everything else better. The effectiveness of your workouts, the way you absorb and recover and benefit from your workouts. So while it's hard and tempting to be like, well, I can just make another hour by getting up another hour earlier, and now I can train 7 hours, in the week, you would be better in almost all cases to try and protect that 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep, even not needing an alarm to get up. Maybe you set an alarm just in case, but like you're feeling restful and motivated. That would be the best. And then even if that meant 30 minutes rather than 90 minutes, in general, that's going to be the best long-term strategy. Now, of course, sometimes you do have to set an alarm and jump out of bed to get to the group ride on Saturday mornings. And maybe that is how you get the 90 minutes or 2 hours or 3 hours on the weekend, is you get out of bed. But we try and get into bed in good time. We try and not be up drinking on a Friday night so that we can really absorb and benefit from that without the sleep disruption being so much of a challenge to us.
Yeah, exactly. This is not meant to be major stressors on your life. And I would say, like, if you do feel like some people, the 2.5 hours that you described would be stress busting, right? Like it would actually help reduce stress, the high intensity, the strength, the like longer ride on the weekends. And for some people, that would actually feel like, we talk about Greg Landman's cup analogy, that might actually feel like, oh, I was already like maxed out on life. And this just feels like just so overwhelming. And I think in those cases, like these aren't the people we're talking to. For them, I would say you're actually probably better doing, yes, some like light strength, some core, that kind of thing, and then a long walk or like a very easy ride or something like that, like something that doesn't feel overwhelming. But if you're not in a highly stressed, like really just completely maxed situation, then I think all of
it's
it
a tricky thing. Yeah. Like I could see that where like if someone was a beginner and these things like me saying going up and down the gravel hill is actually like terrifying to you because the gravel hill is terrifying or going out and riding your bike is terrifying versus like it's the thing you want to do. That's a tricky thing, right? And again, might look at like, well, what is the goal? Is this the time in life to do this? And what would be what are things that are approachable and fun that you can do? And yeah, it might mean paddleboarding for 30 minutes or walking. We do think walking, and we're going to get to some, I think the way you were going before I interrupted you was sort of like other like hacks and tips and ways we can get more movement into the day. And so for these folks, this is sort of the idea is like, I think strength training is going to be the best bang for your buck. This is coming from someone who loves cardio and endurance. But we know
it's a non-negotiable.
It has all the benefits pretty much of cardiovascular training. Like it benefits your heart. So we know that's like, if you want the best benefit, it's like do Dan John's easy strength and sort of go for walks when you can. But with that in mind, yeah, why don't we get into some of these? These would be like Katie Bowman's stacking. She's always hesitant that it's not multitasking. Stacking to her is I'm going for a walk with my friend in nature and we're walking to the store to get flour or whatever we need from the store. And then we're coming back carrying the water in our hands, maybe in different hands and in our backpack or different ways. So we're mixing up the movements and the loading we're getting. We're accomplishing time with friends, time in nature, an errand, and then also our cardiovascular and maybe some mobility from the walking. And so she calls that stacking rather than multitasking. So when we think about that, like, is there anything, where else do you think about when you think about stacking and sort of fitting these in?
Yeah, I mean, so many different ways. From the tiniest version, I actually always think about when we had, she was an ultra runner, Jax Mariash. We had her on probably 8 or 9 years ago. She was one of our earliest guests. And I will always remember she was talking about making a French press of coffee in the morning. And French presses take like 2 minutes to brew.
2 to 4.
2 to 4. Well, 2 minutes if you don't have a lot, if you're time crunched, 2 minutes.
Yes.
And she was saying she did squats while she was waiting for the coffee to brew. And I always remember that because it was just that fantastic reminder that even these little things that you're doing in the kitchen or throughout the day, like, can be great ways to sneak in the tiniest movements. And I think it was Kelly Starrett who talks about, I forget if it was actually a study he was mentioning or just the concept, but he was talking about like doing glute squeezes. So like squeezing your butt while you're brushing your teeth, or doing calf raises while you're brushing your teeth. Again, 2 minutes twice a day. Like actually, brushing your teeth, that's 4 minutes a day that you could be doing, whether it's squats, lunges, calf raises, right, just literally squeezing your butt. Tiny things that can eventually add up, right? I always talk about my 15-minute core routine that I do in the morning, and I always say like I'm getting almost 2 hours of this yoga and core and stuff per week, but even 4 minutes a day, so just the time brushing your teeth, that's half an hour a week of like squatting and lunging and doing all that stuff. Like that's 26 hours a year. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's, you see that a lot with that habit pairing, where you're brushing your teeth. Everyone brushes their teeth. It's disgusting if you don't brush your teeth. You usually get that sense, which is like the sign of a great habit. It's sort of, some people will get that with biking, where it's like if you don't bike, it's like almost more painful than going biking, and that's what you want with these habits, assuming your habit isn't like cocaine or something. It's very similar to that. It's just you're trying to pick things that are beneficial or like mostly beneficial, that you're sort of like getting, I guess, not addicted to, but like your habits are set, right? Like you need to do the thing.
Yeah. And then to kind of add on to the tiny things that don't really take up extra time, I think this is where things like, and I know some people will find this incredibly cheesy, I find it a little cheesy, but it is the ankle weights, like the little 2-pound ankle weights, or the pound or 2-pound like bangle bracelet thingies. Wearing those around as you're, whether it's folding and putting away laundry or putting away groceries,
I've never
or
seen
grocery
these bangles.
shopping.
Are you saying that there's...
Yeah, Bella bangles. They're these like weight bracelets. Yeah.
I have never... They're not 2 pounds. There's no way they're 2 pounds.
I swear to God. I will show you.
They must be massive. Think of it like a 2-pound weight.
Yeah, but they're like a thick cuff.
Okay.
Like they're not
So it's like an ankle
wear.
weight that's metal?
Yeah. No, it's like a soft.
Oh, okay. So it's sort of like an ankle weight you just have.
Yeah,
on your
basically,
wrist.
but
Okay.
for wrist size. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are good. I mean, the weighted vest, a weighted backpack. These would be things that like are sort of making life harder. So you could do this on your dog walk. I've seen people do this. I've seen people just wear them around the house. And if you're sort of getting in and out of your office chair, if you're working from home, maybe you're standing at a standing desk, which would be another way of just like you're doing the same work at the computer. And if you can sort of switch over to some of your time doing that, then that's going to be beneficial. You can also just sit on the floor, which I do fairly often, where you put the laptop on the coffee table, and if you're on a Zoom meeting or having to watch a video or something, then you can do that while you're seated on the floor, and that usually ends up that you're sort of stretching and moving your hips through range of motion, which is not necessarily cardiovascular training, but if you are limited by mobility or some of these hip pain, back pain, IT band pain, some of these movement variations are going to actually be effective training to overcome that limitation.
Yeah, and then of course there's like the standing desk, the next level of the standing desk where you get the little treadmill pad that goes under it. We actually have a little stepper that I will fully admit we don't use. Like
I put it in the sauna.
Yeah, you put it
because Ludo does that. The Hard Rock champion at 51 does in the sauna. Keeping in mind that like that race is also at altitude and can be very hot, but that's what Ludo does. So our stepper's in the sauna now.
Yes. And I've been very tempted to get the treadmill desk, but the reality is I do very little work that would allow me to walk while I do the work is kind of the thing.
Is tough. I'm always amazed when people like are writing books while they're like, I walked 100 miles while writing my book.
They're not.
Well,
like come at me if you have done it and like managed, but I think at best you could do it while dictating a book.
Could be. And maybe that's what they're doing for the bulk of it or something, but who knows? But yeah, I could see if someone's on a lot of calls and whatever, then sort of just doing any sort of movement your body's going to like versus being just sitting statically, right? So you'll have to try it and give it a try and see how it works. I'm trying to think there's some other ones, like obviously commuting to work is something that does take energy and effort, but I have several, executive types that have made the effort and they bring their bike in and everyone sees them as they're walking in with their bike and it's sort of awkward. And then, after a day, everyone's just like, yeah, that guy just bikes to work. Okay.
Well, and I do think this is where e-bikes actually are going to make a big difference because now it's easier to bike to work if it, works 10 miles away or whatever. you can now get an e-bike, bike to work, and not show up completely like drenched in sweat. You can get a bike that actually allows you to wear whatever office wear you need to have on, etc.
Well, and realistically, could also, if you were willing to be sweaty, like some people do have changes of clothes and showers and stuff available, but they can also now maybe extend what is a reasonable commute, right? So if it was up to say 30K, now maybe it's up to 50K. I don't know what's reasonable for different people, right? But that would be something where it's like, does it, in the Katie Bowman stacking idea, it actually probably takes similar amount of time once you, especially if you're in a city where it's like your traffic and you're parking and you're getting out of the parking garage and all this stuff, where the cycling is fairly consistent in how long it takes, because you can always duck and dodge and get on the sidewalk or whatever legal maneuvers you do to get there on time.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the idea even too of just like throughout the day picking a thing, whether it's squats or push-ups or whatever, and challenge yourself to see how many of them you can sneak in during the day. Kind of make it a bit more gamified, right? Like, because it's not that I realize it's not that it can be hard for different people, but like doing a couple push-ups, you're not going to get sweaty from doing that. And it's pretty easy to do like in an office, kind of anywhere, or like, dips off of a chair, anything, or off of your desk or whatever, anything like that. Just these little tiny movement things, and change it up, right? Like do push-ups one week, do squats the next week, walking lunges the week after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see something where it's almost like days, like today's squat day and tomorrow's push-up day, and you just try and accumulate and like keep your little tally on a whiteboard or something. You could also have like, I think Phil Maffetone, his thing was this slow strength, and basically like you would have the barbell even on the floor eventually, and you would just sort of like sprinkle it through the day. Like, here's 5 of these squats, and again, not max squats, but you would do the squats and then you would put it down, and sort of just this like same idea of like sprinkling these motions throughout the day. Sometimes we get so precious with like, I need to warm up for all this, and there isn't really great research on warm-ups aside from like, don't go and run like an Olympic 100-meter sprint or something, or these once you're doing like a max deadlift of 500 pounds. But if we're speaking about a 10-pound dumbbell, you can sort of just like do it. You don't have to, again, not anything sudden or really outside of your normal, but assuming that you can do the exercise and you're proficient, a lot of these things we can sort of sprinkle through, right? You can pick up a 20-pound dumbbell and do an exercise with it.
For sure, yeah. And I think actually that's, when we mentioned the trainer before, the one thing I wanted to add to that is having, the less time that you have, the more important it is to have your setup completely dialed in. And not just dialed in for Pinterest aesthetics, but dialed in for practicality. So if that is the trainer setup in the garage and the weights are next to it, perfect. If you actually do realize, I actually have the most time when I'm in the kitchen working on dinner, or when the kids are doing homework and I'm available to help them with it. Mm-hmm. Or just honestly, if you work from home, like between calls or something like that, the weights should go where you're going to use them. So that might be the yoga mat and the weights are in the office, or actually just like tucked in the corner in the kitchen or in the kids' playroom even, where they're accessible versus, I have to go into the garage to do this weight thing. Like, have it, like, meet yourself where you're at. Meet your stuff where you need it.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess getting into, is there like kookier stuff? I mean, I think any of the breathing stuff, like things that are just like, because again, if we're reimagining what training and workouts and things we can be learning, when we did our 25-hour training week, we said, well, actually the thing is like, you probably don't want to be on your bike or running for 25 hours most weeks, and certainly not immediately, but you could use these other hours using all the owls. So the psychological, you could do mental training, consult with someone, you could do nutritional training, learn how to cook, consult with an RD. Really prepare your fuel, spend time cooking to have great meals. It's an increasing amount of time you're going to have to be actually eating and preparing meals if you train more. So there's sort of like those other hours get eaten up that way. But I think we could apply that here to this 2.5 hour, where some of these other things actually like you could spend time on because you actually do have the time. As you say, you're in and the kids are doing homework. Is there things you could be doing, whether that's breathing exercises. We've had Luke Way on talking about his Breathe Way Better device, which is a little kooky, but for some people would actually maybe fit into certain portions. But there's also stuff with breathing, like just practicing breathing through your nose or deep breathing or breath holds. Like there's all sorts of weird stuff you can do with breathing that probably is beneficial to your health and, just dealing with stress, if not also to your biking or running. What other things are we forgetting as far as the ALs? I'm trying to think, like certainly mental training. I'm trying to think of like a way that you could visualize or goal set. You could be very organized.
Yeah, while you're in like a BS meeting that you have to be at for work, just tune right out and just visualize that race.
Goals. Yeah, or visualizing for sure. Watching camera video, if for some reason you can watch video at some point. You could be watching head cam video for something. Certainly technical skills, like a lot of people, you could go out with the kids and practice wheelies. Like if your kids are going to the park, you could be practicing bike skills alongside them or at the same time they're playing something else. So technical, mechanical, again, maybe harder with time, but maybe you can be learning mechanical things or working on bike tech stuff or bike mechanical stuff. What other L's are we forgetting? Are we going through all of them?
Social. So again, this is like the riding with your friends, like adding that in. And maybe you do actually realize I have time where I could convince my friends to do something different, right? Like whether it's while the kids are at swim practice, you and a couple friends actually do a bit of like a run in the area during practice. I know a couple friends that actually will like run laps around like the soccer fields when their kids are at soccer practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And doing it with a couple friends, then you're checking off that social. I just convinced a friend to take boxing classes with me, and that's been awesome. And, it's kind of we used to have coffee together on Friday mornings, and now we do this.
Right.
So
that's sort of a like make life harder. Like you could just sit on the couch for another hour, or you could like get out and do something. And that could be a bike ride. That could be a walk. I think most people are fine with a walk once you get them out. And a lot of times the conversation is better. They find when you're walking alongside someone, there's something about that like rhythm of walking and not staring the person directly in the face sometimes that like actually can bring out really good conversation and meaningful conversation, which then gets into the whole like psychological, social, just how you feel about your connections to other people.
I think that's actually a really important tip for guys because let's be honest.
I mean, I wasn't speaking for myself, but I was.
But you completely were. Yeah. 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 And then, okay, the only other note I'm seeing here that we didn't touch on is this idea of jump training. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Well, I love Buddy Lee, my one athlete.
My boxing instructor does too.
Yeah, the one athlete I work with, also named Peter, he got me into this Buddy Lee. I like skipping. We did a bunch of it in, I guess, off of like jump rope for heart and stuff when I was in high school years ago. I think we did a bit in university with my university credit in gym class as well. But Buddy Lee is sort of, where was he from? He's from Virginia. And
I said Maryland, but you're right.
I think it's Virginia. And so he basically just really likes jump rope, and he did a bunch of stuff where he's trying to get different sports to use it as conditioning. And the idea though is that like the jump training plyometrics are pretty beneficial just all around. There's some risk with it, but there's of course risk with everything. But a lot of Buddy Lee's stuff, like the book is like, you can go as into it as you need to, but essentially there's like different foot patterns you can do, which for coordination and sort of like just can you do it is like an interesting thing to figure out, especially for cyclists to try and be coordinated. I think for trail runners, some of these things like fast feet and like having good coordination and foot coordination probably makes sense. And then the jump, like, certainly just doing double unders where the rope goes twice under and you jump pretty high is pretty good power training, jump training, plyometric training. So the great thing is that like most of his routines are under 5 minutes, maybe max 10 minutes because jumping is pretty vigorous. But there's also all these studies in all types of participants or samples, whether they're like high-end male cyclists who have their bone density is reducing, their hips are, they say they're like frail, they're like a 90-year-old's hips or something. And then you have obviously other people who are getting older and have maybe osteopenia, osteoporosis, who then get exposed to some of these jumps. Again, some of it is supervised by doctors and medical people because it is like getting precarious, but you do see improvements in these things like bone health. But you can also see from these jump training interventions increases in even performance, which is pretty cool. And so a lot of these things, again, take 5 minutes. The one that we've talked about with Greg Lehman on a past podcast was more dealing with runners. But they did 10 seconds of jumping every minute on the minute for 5 minutes. So this is something when I'm out with the dog, I'll just go and I'll jump for 10 seconds and then...
Which is good because often he just sits down and refuses to keep going. So
So it depends on your dog and what they're into. Our dog doesn't really go very far. So, I just sort of do this and just sort of sprinkle it through as we're walking around. And again, 10 seconds takes, it's nothing. And so you can scale that over time, increase the time, increase the jump height, do all sorts of things. But to get started, I think that's another thing where like the benefit for the amount of time invested is pretty low. And you can take the Buddy Lee jump rope strategy, or you can just do, when I'm out with the dog, I'm not doing jump rope. I should clarify, like that's just a pogo jump where it's sort of like, mostly driven from the ankles. But yeah, so that would be jump training. It's just like, it's just another one, I think is like pretty good, just sort of fun. I think the crossover to a lot of things is good. And they say like, the longer you can keep jumping in the mix, the better, right? Like you don't, when you're thinking about like a stereotypical older person, there's not a lot of jump and pop. So the longer we can keep this, again, be careful that as you ease this into it. But I think that's something that can be pretty effective.
Love it. All right. Anything else before we wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think you could take our cross training would be just like thinking outside the box a bit. Like if you are a cyclist and you're thinking like that whole 2.5 hours or whatever, it has to be running or biking, whatever your sport is. Like I do think that that's where our cross training opens up these other windows, this chance for little double days where we're doing little short core and then a run in the PM and then a little bit of strength in the morning on Tuesday. And then like maybe just jumps in the PM on Tuesday. And then Wednesday we get our little longer ride. But then also maybe we do core before bed. So this idea where you're thinking about these like little movement windows and you're just really reimagining what movement or training is, because often we're too rigid and too precious with like that workout having to be this like exact 90 minutes to count, or has to be on a bicycle outside to count or a bicycle inside to count.
Yeah, and I think that's where the 2.5 hour people get themselves in trouble and just end up not doing anything, is because it's like, oh, well, I only have 40 minutes, so now I can't do the hour ride that I planned, so it's not worth it.
Yeah, and I've tried to be more even with my strength. Like I've gone out a few days and like, if squat's your main thing or whatever your main exercise is, like, and if you don't have one, like pick the one that you're actually trying to improve in strength, whether you're a deadlifter or a clean or whatever your main exercise, a press, it doesn't really matter. But then when you are time limited, like, get a few sets of it in, right? Like it in the same way that like if you're trying to be a better biker, if you go and do biking for 30 minutes, it's going to be better than not doing biking. And the thing is like when you string those days together, it will keep getting better. But if you start putting up a bunch of zeros, then it's not much, right?
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, keep the questions coming. You can find us over at consummateathlete.com, at consummateathlete on Instagram. And of course, if you are looking for a way to take payments in a Google form, check out our friends and longtime sponsors over at Payable Apps. It's payableapps.com/athlete. All right. With that, happy training, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.